I already feel like this video is going to be very long, so please, if you haven't already, grab a snack, grab a drink, get comfortable. Hello, good morning, and welcome to Library Scented Life. So today I'm going to talk about a book that I just finished last night and I can't stop thinking about. After I read it, I sat staring at a wall, yelling, "Oh my god," for 10 minutes. I can't express enough how much I love this book. So the book I am talking about is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. As you can tell from all the tabs, I absolutely love this book. There are so many noteworthy things, and I ran out of almost all of my tabs by reading this book, but I don't regret a thing. For today's review, I'm going to give a bit of a synopsis and a bit of a non-spoilery review, and then I'm going to get into my top 5 pros and my top 5 cons of this book. Now, those pros and cons are going to be very spoilery, and I will give you a warning before they start, so if you haven't read it yet, please read that, then come back and freak out over this book with me. So this book takes place in a world where magic used to exist. All the people born with stark white hair had the ability to do some type of magic in the future. And then the royal family and other non-magic people became uncomfortable and felt threatened by the people who had the magic, so they took magic away. And while they did this, they violently executed all the adult Magi people. So this story follows our main character, Zélie, and her mother was one of the adult Magi when the raid happened, and she was born with white hair, so she would have developed magic if it was still in existence. So Zélie finds that there might be a way to bring back magic, and this story is about her going against all odds, trying to bring it back. So Children of Blood and Bone for me, if you couldn't already tell, was a 5-star read, and here are some of the reasons why. This book has beautiful writing and descriptions. It's very lyrical, very poetic. It was very touching. It described feelings and places so vividly, and I felt like I was there and I could see it all, and I love that so much, and I feel like that's such an important thing in fantasy novels. Surprisingly, this is actually Tomi Adeyemi's debut novel, which is ridiculous. If there's that much talent in her for her first book, I can't imagine what's coming from her, and I'm so excited to find out. The character development in this book is unbelievable. I could not stop reading this book. It's fast-paced and it's also suspenseful. If you see all these little red tabs, that was if I was in suspense for 5 pages or more, and there are so many of them. The last non-spoiler thing I will say is that if you like Avatar: The Last Airbender, the cartoon, you will love this book. This book has many comparisons to it in terms of plot devices and in lovable characters that grow and that grow on you. So now I'm going to get into the pros and cons, so if you have not read this book, please click away from this video and go pick up this book and read it as soon as you can. And until you've read it, I'll see you in the next video. Okay, so now for the spoilers. So pro number 1. I mentioned in my non-spoiler review the important and amazing character development, and I would specifically like to look at Amari's character. So something very important in character development is that the character in the beginning is still recognizable inside the character at the end of the story. Because this is part of a series, the character development would be expected to take place a lot slower, and I was expecting to look at the 3rd book and find the most character development, but even just in the first book, it was amazing. So something I would like to point out about Amari's character development is that we can still see her in the new person she is at the end. So at the beginning of the story, she has experienced trauma in her growing up with a father who was hard on her, as well as her grief for her best friend. She is experiencing the results of this trauma while out of her comfort zone, out of everything she's ever known. So she is understandably more vulnerable in this world, and Zélie doesn't hesitate to point this out, and not in a positive light. Now, this really comes into play later on when Zélie experiences a trauma of her own. So when Zélie is experiencing this trauma, we really see Amari step forward with true empathy and understanding. Not only were they abused by the same person, but Amari is able to show empathy in everything she does, from the point where she becomes the lioness and onward. Another really important part about Amari is that at the beginning, the reality of the raid, there was a lot of disbelief around it because it was her father who conducted the raid, and then later on when Zhu is telling her story about how her people were raided as well, Amari doesn't stare at her in disbelief or comment on how she can't believe that her father had done that. Instead, she apologizes. And this apology is not just coming from the daughter of the person who conducted the raid, but as a person empathizing. So as you might have guessed by now, I don't have many cons for this book. It is a 5-star book, so the cons might seem a little less powerful than the pros, which is a really good thing. So just so you know, the cons are going to be a little bit silly. So con number 1, there were a couple of terms that pulled me out of the fantasy story, so I only marked 2 spots where this really happened to me, where I was pulled out of the fantasy world for a second and reminded that I was reading a book. So one of them technically made sense. It was the term roundhouse kick. Technically, the description of the fighting technique was perfect and spot on, but a term specifically from our reality kind of threw me off for a second. The second time this happened to me was, I believe it was Zaylee who, when it was really dark in a room, called out guys to see where her friends were. So guys to me is more of a slang term in this reality, and I didn't find it really suited that one. I understand that they're young kids, but I feel like their slang would be very different from ours, so it just pulled me out just for a second. So pro number 2 is that the fantasy themes could still translate to reality. I know that my last con was that realistic things were pulling me out of the fantasy world, but this is kind of different. So this is when a theme in a fantasy story is able to translate and represent something that's really happening. So Tomi actually left an author's note in the end of the book explaining the connection and the inspiration that she drew from the realities of police brutality in the Black community. In this book, many young children are killed and many families are torn apart, the ways it affects the families years down the line. So this book really allows you to look into the ignorance and blind eye that the world turns on the Black community when police brutality occurs. It seems it is only the families that suffer and that no one makes an effort towards making a real change, except for the people in those communities who are then not listened to. This book really allows us to sit in that feeling and to think about it while reading the book and well afterwards. This book also touched on other real themes such as shadeism in the Black community, as well as many different forms of trauma and different things trauma can stem from, and even just the loneliness of feeling disconnected from your identity, as well as the identity of the ones around you. Another really important thing that this book touched on was self-hatred in terms of a part of your identity. So in one part, Zaylee is talking about how after the raid happened, she hated her white hair because it represented how she was part of the Magi people, and she wanted to rip it out, and she hated herself in that moment because of her oppressors. This actually happens in real life a lot of the time in terms of skin color, the LGBTQ community, femininity, different cultures. If there is an oppressor, a lot of the times there is a stage where the person who's being oppressed will feel that if that part of their identity is gone, everything will be okay and they can be normal and not oppressed. Even though this book touched on it for a sentence, the enormity of that being in a book was amazing, and it was so important to me. So con number 2 was repeated descriptions and phrases. So there were a lot of characters in this book who had a phrase that they'd repeat to themselves to motivate themselves or to remind them of their morals and what they believe in. And for the most part, this fit and it worked, and it allowed us to remember who the character thought they were and who they wanted to be, and maybe the difference between that, especially in terms of Zaylee and in terms of Inan. But a couple of times there were repeated descriptions that, although it might have been trying to connect to characters, kind of threw me off a little bit. So there's one scene where Inan and Amari's dad is very passionate about something and squeezes something he's holding so tight his knuckles crack. And then later on, we hear the same phrase with Inan squeezing the chest piece so tight his knuckles crack. So this might have been a relation between the father and son and the similarities between them, but since it was so far apart, it actually pulled me out of the story a little bit. But there were other instances where this was done very well. So this is kind of a con, but it might not be for most people, and it might have just been me that was a little bit torn out of the story. So pro number 3 is simply the words. This book is beautiful. As I said before, it's lyrical and poetic. The descriptions, I really felt like I was there when they went to the temple and they're looking up at all the statues for the first time. The description of the wrinkles on the statue's face and her hair and how it shows all the coils in the statue. That was such a beautiful description. I felt like I was there, and I felt like I was ready to go to this final battle in this book with these characters. So I just realized my fan was on in the background for the whole rest of that video, so I apologize for the sound, but now it's gone, and I hope the sound's a little bit better for you. I would re-record, but the light is fading, and I really want to get this filmed because I need to talk about this book right now. So con number 3 was a plot thing. Near the ending, when they're approaching the sacred island, they are saying that all the royal guards are there, all of the guards that have oppressed them for years are on that island, waiting for them and still arriving. So my question is, Zélie was unconscious for a day or maybe more, I don't remember exactly, but they knew that she was going to this island, and a bunch of boats were just arriving and they managed to get on one of those boats. Why were those boats just arriving if they knew a day ago that she was going to be there? I know that someone had to go and get her father for that heartbreaking plot twist, but that only takes one boat, and there were so many still coming in, so I just don't know why they took so long to get there. But maybe there's a reason, maybe I missed something. Let me know in the comments down below if you found this too, or if I just misinterpreted or misread something there. So pro number 4, that this book is Avatar: The Last Airbender. I believe Tomi has said that she was inspired by that show, and in terms of the plot devices and characters, you can really see it, and I love it so much. Avatar: The Last Airbender is a cartoon series that I highly recommend. It has the best characters in any kids show that I have ever seen. It is fast-paced, funny, it's silly, it's serious, it's amazing. And this book gave me all of those feelings all over again, and I absolutely loved it. So I'm going to make a couple comparisons to the show and this book. So there is an oppressive ruler who in the Avatar: The Last Airbender is the Firebenders. Another very important comparison is the violence that follows the magic being taken away and the oppressive rule. Families are torn apart, just like in this book. So something else I can compare to it is there's one person who can restore balance, but instead of the Avatar, it's Zélie, who is connected with the gods and can do the ritual to bring back magic. Other comparisons could be that Zélie was scarred by her brother, but being pushed by her father, so essentially she was scarred by her father, and Zuko was also scarred by his father, so there's a comparison there, but Zuko is more comparable to Inan, Amari's brother, in that he is questioning what the right thing to do is, and he is trying to please his father, but trying to avoid listening to his heart, but it still sneaks its way in there. And then there's that comparison, of course, to Zélie being like Katara and Inan being like Zuko, in that he's from the royal family and she's from someone his family has destroyed, and there's a bit of a romance there. I know it wasn't official in Avatar, it was to me, but they're very comparable in terms of the way they hate each other, then they can tolerate each other, but they don't trust each other, and how the relationship changes and blends. Another funny comparison is that Rowan, the man who helps them get to the island in time, he is very comparable to the character Jet from Avatar: The Last Airbender. His family has been destroyed by the rule, and his reaction to it is to be a vigilante and to follow his own rules, and he also kind of has a thing for Zélie, as Jet has a thing for Katara. And then one more comparison, Nyla is Appa from Avatar: The Last Airbender, and no one can convince me otherwise. So now we are on to con number 4. So con number 4 for me is Inan and Zélie together. I have a lot of feelings and a lot of problems with this relationship, in that Inan is still questioning things and yet forms a bond with someone that he's not ready to form a bond with. I know I said before they're very much like Katara and Zuko, and I love Katara and Zuko together, but the difference is to me that before Zuko becomes fully part of the group and trusted and brought in, he spends years trying to prove to his father he's worthy, and then he spends years after that trying to prove to himself that he's worthy and a good person. And he spends years soul searching, and then when he's decided, he goes over to the good side. And Inan doesn't do this. He doesn't have this chance. His person to bounce ideas and morals off of is the same one he chooses to have a relationship with, which sounds fine, but when he's questioning something that so directly impacts her family, and everything she loves, there's something wrong with this relationship. And I think this was intentional of Tomi. I don't think she meant for this relationship to be a good one. I think she meant for it to be controversial, and you love them and you hate them. I would also like to comment on my least favorite part of the book right now, which was dream sex. Throughout the book, Inan and Zélie are able to connect through Anand's power to talk to her through dreams that he initiates and she falls into, and it's in this own little world. If you've seen Star Wars, it's kind of like how Rey and Kylo Ren see each other and hear each other throughout the day, and no one else can see the person they're talking to. So imagine that happened, and then they have sex in that world. And that's what happened. And it was really strange for me. I don't know how I feel about that, and I'm wondering, can you get pregnant in Dream World? Do they have dream babies? Like, can STDs pass through this dream world? I don't know how this works. It confuses me. So pro number 5, my final pro, although not really, it's just the top 5 pro, is that epilogue. Oh my goodness, I was not expecting that. And I know some of you who haven't read this are still watching this and have been spoiled to this point. I'm not spoiling this part for you, but I was not expecting that epilogue at all. It caught me by surprise. As I said at the beginning of the video, this is what got me staring at a wall for 10 minutes, yelling, oh my god, and not being able to speak coherently for the rest of the night. That epilogue was genius. It set up the next book while closing off this book perfectly. And I'm so excited to see what happens next. Con number 5 is something else kind of silly and kind of weird that I'm commenting on, but it was the slight variation of real-world animals, slight variations of their names to make them mythical. I liked this for the most part. It was kind of funny, but some of the words just made me laugh. There was one line where they're eating not antelope meat, but antelopentine meat. And I just couldn't stop laughing at that for some reason, which I guess makes it a pro. So that is my pros and cons review of Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. If you have not picked this up yet, you need to do so right away. And then when you do, you'll know you need to suggest it to everyone in your life. This book is important. It's amazing. I feel like everyone should read it. It will mean something different to everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you like it, and if you want to, please leave a comment down below telling me, have you read this yet? And if you have, what did you think? Do you agree? Is it 5 stars? Or was it not so great for you? Please let me know. Let's have a discussion. I'm so excited to see you in my next video. Bye!